Coverage from here, the lands of the Yolngu people of the Gumatj clan on Gulkula, this very special site, Carly, where we're gathering today along with hundreds of Australians who have made the trek from around the nation for the start of this very special festival.
Including the Prime Minister, who has just arrived here at the Bungal ceremonial ground. We're about to hear a very important speech. Dan, I think you might be able to see the pictures of those gathered around.
And that's Jawa Yunupingu there, the chairman of the Yopi Indi Foundation, who really is welcoming the Prime Minister in quite a formal ceremony to welcome him to this country and also to set the groundwork of what he hopes will be the focus of this festival, which is, we might just listen in for a moment.
So, Jack Johnson, Gulkula.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jack Gulkula Thompson. I was named after this place by my wawa, Mr. M. Yunupingu, the Yothu Indi singer and philosopher, and it is again my honor to welcome you all here to Gulkula. I pay my respects to the Gumatj people, the landowners, and to all the Yolngu clans of this region. And today, I remember my other wawa, Mr. G. Yunupingu, the Gumatj clan leader, who remains with us in spirit. Today, we are gathered here at a very special ceremony in a very special place, and shortly, you will be witness to a very special ceremony. The ceremony is Gurta, the sacred fire of the Gumatj, a fire brought to the opening of Garma by Yunupingu in years gone by and now continued in all its power. With it will come an object of great significance and power. In this ceremony, we will see something that is as ancient as it is wonderful, a ceremony and an item crafted from the very bones of the land. It is a ceremony that is as alive and is as vibrant today as it was 1,000 years ago and more. It is a testament to the power of the Yolngu philosophy of life and the way Yolngu people see life and loss. Because this ceremony is of the fire, it talks of renewal after loss, of how the land renews the people, burns off grief, and gives strength for the future. And it honors a Prime Minister who was true to his word and put a question to the Australian people with sincerity and honesty. We know the result now, ladies and gentlemen, but we take strength from the resilience and determination of Aboriginal people who again welcome us to this ceremony ground at Garma. We thank the Yolngu people for that, for their generosity and strength and their determination. We thank Aboriginal people Australia-wide for being who you are and not allowing us Balanda to change you to be who we might want you to be. We think our first Australians know what it is to be Australians, and we thank them for continuing to share their country and their ceremony with us here in an ancient land under southern stars. Thank you.
You, thank you. Gulkula. Well said. And welcome back to Gulkula. I'd like to ask the audience in the front of me to make a room for the Khmer people that is entering to the Mongol ground. Please give us a room. If you like to sit around, there's plenty of rooms around here in the front and this side. Good on you. Thank you.
Jawa Yunupingu there is just making way and asking the incredible crowd here to make space so that more performers who are just off screen behind us can make their way in. Strength, resilience, determination, Carly, Jack Gulkula Thompson there grounding the start of this ceremony as he welcomed the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
He actually thanked him as well and acknowledged him on delivering on that promise to take the country to a referendum. I think there was a big sense of gratitude there from Jack Thompson.
And we can see there sitting alongside Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is the new Minister for Indigenous Australians, Malandiri McCarthy, a Territorian who actually used to be an ABC journalist, a member of the Parliament in the NT, and was a Cabinet Minister here before moving into the Senate in a federal capacity. And also there, the most recent outgoing Minister for Indigenous Australians, Linda Burney, as well. Mayatili Marika also sitting there. Let's take a listen back to Jawa Yunupingu.
The yoga and the Indi, that means mother and child. So next performance is going to be a special one for our Prime Minister, and beware with us that we're going to give him a present, surprise present. So stay tuned, Mr. Prime Minister. No, while we're waiting for this mob, this special
And Carly, we are waiting for the performers to make their way over into the bungal there. And I just wanted to let you know about the performers who were there that introduced the Prime Minister, the Dalwangu and Nondaribala clans there, with particularly wearing that red, and we're going to see more performers soon. This is, of course, the theme this year is fire, strength, renewal, and fire, an important totem for the Yolngu people of this country, because of course it's what goes through in the dry season. It burns through at this time of the year and creates a great sense of renewal in the environment.
All about maintaining country and bringing that growth back, and that has been a huge theme here this weekend. Regrowth, renewal, strength and resilience. I know that it's men's business a lot of the time to paint up those dancers, although we've had a couple of the camera operators and male photographers go in and take beautiful images of that today, which you can see on the ABC website. It is truly gorgeous imagery, watching those men prepare for these dances that we're about to see this afternoon.
And we'll take you back as we hear about these dancers here. And we also Just heard, Carly, that that reference to a very special gift from the bones of this land to be given to the Prime Minister. We know that Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has received gifts the last 2 Garmas. In fact, he's been here each year since he won the election in 2022 and became the Prime Minister. And we understand that there's going to be a very special gift. There's been a lot of speculation about what that would be, perhaps related to fire, the renewal.
It was interesting to hear Jawa give a hint there about a very, very special gift for the Prime Minister. I'm trying to imagine what it could be around fire. I thought that he said he was going to say, we're going to perform treaty for you, but no, that was not. He was saying there's going to be beautiful dances and ceremonial dances as a welcome.
And we're seeing here that great collaboration, the intergenerational power of storytelling. There are Yolngu people that are the youngest of the young, tiny there, right through to adults that have been performing ceremony and sharing that for some time. And it's always so important, I think, that we acknowledge that power of intergenerational sharing of culture.
I've heard from leaders this weekend that is what this year's Garma is about, really. It's passing on the learnings and the strength to the next generation to keep the fire burning. I mean, we heard from Jawa Yunupingu today, who really is the big boss man here in northeast Arnhem Land, that there may not be a treaty within another 30 or 40 years, which is out of his lifetime. So he's talking about the importance of passing on to his next generations. How do we keep this conversation going? How do we keep fighting for what, Jawa Yunupingu and his family have been asking and demanding since the 90s or the 80s.
And of course it is a conversation that is happening in different ways around the nation, and it was happening here in the Northern Territory, but those plans seem to have stalled a little. We are in an election campaign here. We'll take you back because I understand that Jawa Yunupingu is about to share more about this performance.
As the Prime Minister.
Your hands, please, so much, people. Thank you so much.
Me that what we are seeing and is being shared with the Prime Minister and all of us right now is, of course, strict and really important protocol here on Yolngu country about the way guests are invited and the process and what it means for the Prime Minister to be connected to this place where we are gathering right now.
This is 60,000 years of culture and protocol and knowledge on display, so generously shown by the Yolngu people, and It's an important moment, those two leaders standing together, Jawa Yunupingu and the Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, standing together, accepting this welcome. Because it's an incredibly important protocol to be welcomed to country.
And sharing in this moment, and that there's that sense of generosity and reciprocity between everyone that has come to this moment. There's almost a sense of that common ground of listening, or what in other parts of the Northern Territory is known as dadidi, which is deep listening to and being captured and caught, an understanding of a moment in time.
Deep listening. It is an incredible thing to think about. I mean, this is a cultural exchange as well. There are multiple clans here today offering a welcome to the Prime Minister. And I think there's a lot of messaging of gratitude as well to him.
And it can't be understated, the significance of having a Prime Minister, a sitting Prime Minister, come to this country. It's been happening for decades, and each year is just as important. Politicians, Prime Ministers of all stripes that have come here and had similar welcomes, but all different in each time, and the tone, and based on the politics that is at play, and the big discussions that are happening.
It just shows how influential Garma Festival is and has been. This is the 24th Garma Festival. There have been some big conversations at previous Garmas. This is where a lot of the driving behind the Indigenous Voice to Parliament came from. The Garma Institute is a model of a local education model that has been working, and the Prime Minister, through his support behind the Garma Institute last year, could that be scaled up across the country, across other states and territories? There's big conversations going on over the next few days.
Oh, my word. And right here, there is what's known as a Dilak Council, which is the clan groups of this region come together, and it's where they talk about the issues and about a focus of what are the possible solutions, and how, Carly, do you find a way to navigate through very, very challenging issues that are affecting people and communities, where there are other factors at play.
Dilek was almost like a local voice in a way.
In a lot of ways,
it's a model.
It's self-determination as determined by the Yolngu people. And we'll just take you back for this moment.
Mr. Prime Minister, we're gonna give you that Dorna, which we call Dorna, which is a special stick. We get a paperback tree that was done on the area, and that one is a special item that you will receive.
Just explain why they were coming so close to him and how much respect it showed.
Just on that closer to you, Prime Minister, that powerful dance was empowering you to take that stick with you. And you can empower the ministers and whoever in the parliament. Thank you. I'd like to call the Prime Minister to have a speech. Thanks.
Can I acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Gumaj people, of the Yolngu people, and thank them for their care for this land for 60,000 years. And say, as Prime Minister of Australia, we all share an incredible honour and privilege of sharing this great island continent of ours with the oldest continuous culture on earth. I'll have much more to say tomorrow morning, but today I want to thank my friend Jawa and the traditional owners here and the elders for the wonderful welcome back that I've received. I thank them for giving me the incredible honour of this gift that I will cherish. When you walk into the Prime Minister's residence of the Lodge, the first thing that every visitor sees is a yadaki given to me here at my first visit as Prime Minister by Yunupingu. It has a place of honour in the Prime Minister's residence of Australia, and it will stay there. This is a great honour today. I thank you for the welcome for me and other Balanda who are here. And I look forward to spending once again a couple of wonderful days with you, celebrating language, culture, dance, and hoping for the creation of a better future as we walk forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Welcome, everyone, to this year's Garma. I'd like to acknowledge you people coming from near and far, north, south, east, or west, across the nation or around the world. I declare Garma 2024 open. Yo, Mari. Yo, hatta on jakal kurolla. Tuona puolella näkää puolemerkki. Natkaa kurolla Prime Minister rukka. Yo, ainakaan olla jo. Mari pulo. Ollakaan lagi orang ni. Ko. Ruang era le, lurkut now ya. Bikanga.
And Jawa Yunupingu, they're speaking in Yolngu language to those who have gathered from across this region of the Northern Territory, declaring Garma 2024 open, welcoming everyone and explaining the significance that dance was to empower the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to take that stick with him, the message, and he is in turn can empower the ministers in Parliament, and of course the Prime Minister speaking to what a special gift that was for him, and speaking to the earlier gifts, Carly, that he's received when visiting here, having pride of place at the Lodge, the Prime Minister's residence in Canberra.
It's going straight to the Lodge. That's what the Prime Minister said. It was a beautiful special stick, Jawa said, made of paper bark, a beautiful paint over it. It looked like a totem, like a totem pole, beautiful. So the Prime Minister has just accepted that gift from Jawa, the chair of the Yothu Yindi Foundation. We can see some gorgeous little ones out on the Bungal now on this ancient ceremonial ground, which was a Bungal long before Garma existed. Folks have been telling me at the festival, you know, which has been going on for 24 years now, but the Bungal is an ancient Aboriginal ceremonial ground.
Perhaps stealing the show are these tiny little Yolngu children that I understand to be about 2 years old, who are also participating and contributing and being a part of this. The Prime Minister there, Carly, said that there was a hope for the creation of a better future as we walk together. And in the brief time that I've been back out on this very special country, I've got the sense that there is a great sense of healing that needs to happen here. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are feeling hurt and feeling a great sense of pain. In fact, in his opening address, Jawa Yunupingu, in the programming materials, said, I have to be honest and say that I'm still hurting about the vote, the referendum on October 14 last year, which followed years of hard work, Jawa Yunupingu said, by my people who promised a future of unity where the first Australians had a real say in the life of the nation. It's hard to forget the pain in my sister's votes as the vote came in on that night. He said, to us the result was bitter, shattered dreams in a lucky country.
Oh, it has not yet been 1 year since 60% of Australia voted no to a voice to Parliament. This is the first major gathering of Indigenous leaders and stakeholders and Aboriginal community-controlled organisations since the referendum in October last year. It's that first real big coming together to reflect on the result, the outcome, the effort and resources and years of advocacy that were put in the lead up to the referendum. You know, Janice Bauman told me yesterday that they do accept that rejection and they are moving forward after the no result.
It's an interesting point, the tone that is being set by Denise Bowden, CEO of the Yothu Yindi Foundation. She said in a panel that was hosted by our colleague David Spears just a short while before the proceedings, the formal proceedings got underway, she said, although the referendum failed, there's a sense of progress. We now have an answer that we didn't have before. And I thought there's a real depth actually when you think about what she's saying, is that we understand something about ourselves that we didn't know before, and how that's interpreted, I think, is one of the great points that is being discussed across the nation and has been. I certainly know everywhere that I've travelled, and people want to talk to me from the yes and the no sides about what does it actually mean? How do we translate that into action or a sense of where we're going as a nation?
And as much hurt as there may have been. Many say that conversation needed to happen last year to find out that, okay, Australia may not want, does not want to change the Constitution, but there are other ways forward, and I think those are being discussed here this weekend, including Makarrata.
Yeah.
You know, the Uluru Statement had 3 major elements: voice, treaty, truth, and it was an election promise from the Prime Minister, who is here behind us today, to implement those 3: voice, treaty, truth. Okay, voice didn't get over the line, but truth and treaty are high on the agenda here this weekend.
Well, and it's a very important point. Malarndirri McCarthy, the Minister for Indigenous Australians, said on that same panel that I mentioned with Denise Bowden and David Spears a moment ago, she said, we remain committed to the 3 elements of the Uluru Statement: voice, treaty, Makarrata and truth. And that, of course, was the commitment that Prime Minister Albanese made that May night when it became clear that the Prime Minister and the Labor Party had won the majority of votes in Australia and would form government. It was almost the first words out of his mouth to commit in full.
It was. I asked Minister McCarthy before that keynote speech. I had a one-on-one sit down with her. I asked her, what is your timeline for Makarrata? If you are committed to implementing truth-telling and treaty at the national level, when can we see that? We're pretty much in an election campaign now. There'll be an election next year, and we want to put to Minister McCarthy, will that be a big discussion in the lead up to the election? Makarrata, truth-telling at the national level and treaty at the national level. The Minister couldn't provide a timeline on that one.
And, well, and you get that sense that the government have said previously that there is a great consideration around what are the next steps. And in fact, Malarndirri McCarthy said today that her job is about bridging divides, bringing people together, finding common ground, to reflect, to listen, to renew. She said, quote, now is the time to reach across the political divide so that Indigenous affairs isn't the political football it has been.
Well, that's what I hear when I go out on the road, gathering from community members. We are sick of our matters being a political football. Whether it's, we're not just a closing the gap target, we're not just a statistic. Truth-telling and treaty will be used, let's face it, as a big political talking topic in the lead up to next year's election.
And it's happening already right now, isn't it? We know that in Queensland there are hearings around treaty and truth happening as we speak. There's the Europe Commission in Victoria, which has seen the Premier there giving evidence. There is the voice mechanism in South Australia, which has had its elections, and I was speaking to a contact in the South Australian government today saying they are already raising a number of issues. We might take you back and listen into this for a moment.
Yo, handshake out, ladies and gentlemen.
we have just heard, we're about to hear from the Prime Minister, I believe, or...
Well, and this is, I think it's fair to say, very free-flowing that we are seeing and hearing this unfold in real time here. And there is a huge crowd who has gathered. There are Australians from all walks of life, from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nations right across the country. There are people from the business sector, from philanthropy.
This Garma Festival started as a humble barbecue with, Yolngu leaders coming together and having big talks around the campfire. That is still happening at Garma Festival. There's a lot of corporates here, a lot of CEOs, but there's a lot of community stakeholders as well that can't make the trek to Garma. I saw a Aboriginal fella from Lismore post on his socials a few days ago at 4 a.m. On the train station platform with his backpack on, saying, I'm making my annual trek to Garma, there from Lismore in the Northern Rivers, Bunjalung country.
And you see and hear and meet all sorts of people. You're right, there are so many different layers to this festival. There is what's happening on the Bungal, these ceremonial grounds, the pictures that we are seeing right now. There are the key forums. We will hear from the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese tomorrow giving a keynote address. There are panel discussions. There are all sorts of things happening. There is a youth forum. But then there's also, Carly, that the really important, and it's a little intangible, isn't it? The conversations you have sitting around, having a cup of tea, talking with all people of all different walks of life, having often very heartfelt, frank conversations.
This is where I learn the most at Garma, when I can put my feet up at the end of the day and sit around the campfire, with Yolngu people. I mean, yesterday my conversations were talking a lot about crocodiles. A fella...
The baru, of course, which is an important
sacred, very sacred animal.
For this country, and you see it in the artworks, you see it as a part of life here. Of course, when you live on this country, the baru, the crocodile, is ever present.
That's right. Well, we are on the top of a cliff top here in the stringy bark forest.
We are quite a ways away.
We're quite safe, but that was my first question. Can the crocs get us in the tents? His answer was, there are crocs everywhere here. Biggest mob crocs, saltwater crocs and freshwater crocs. But no, at Garma Festival we are quite high up on a cliff top in a stringy bark forest in the red dirt.
Well, and right now, of course, we are in the middle of the dry season. It's why this festival is held at this time of the year, when, of course, there's a long weekend here in the Northern Territory. But it is actually starting to rain. There is
a bit of a sun shower.
A little sun shower right now.
It's quite special.
And
the lighting is incredible.
This is really unexpected at this time of the year. Darwin, of course, on Larrakia country had rain just a couple of days ago that was unseasonal. And as you know, I grew up in the Northern Territory.
There's only two seasons, right? I grew up in Cairns, very similar.
Yeah.
You're wet and you're dry. And you're hot and you're not so hot.
That's right, especially for this top end part. And Cairns is very similar. And so you don't expect rain at this time of the year.
Just a couple of golden sprinkles there was.
Yeah, my word, there certainly isn't. But of course, that's not dampening spirits. People are absorbing these moments of watching this special performance. Is the singing that is attached to it, the singing of song, the stories coming to life in such an important, powerful way that, as we've mentioned, has been happening on this country for such a very, very long time.
It's that quintessential sound of Yolngu men singing against the clapsticks. You hear it in the Yothi Yindi albums, in the records they have put out. You hear it in even King Stingray, a contemporary band from not too far away, and they will be performing on Sunday night here at Garma Festival.
As will Deborah Cheetham-Freyon, of course, the soprano, who sings with such power about her lived experience and what it means to her coming from her background. And so there's this real fascinating
opera, right?
Opera,
An opera singer here in the red dirt against this traditional song and dance from Gumatj people.
And all of this, while you've got all of these people that are gathering, and you touched on before, Carly, that there is that federal election that will likely be in the next 12 months. Lots of speculation of whether Prime Minister Anthony Albanese would call that early or whether, in fact, that'll be full term. I think the Prime Minister has said he doesn't intend that to be the case to go early. But of course, given that the referendum was 10 months ago, as we gather here right now, there is so much discussion about tomorrow's speech from the Prime Minister. Will there be detail about what the government's intentions are going forward? What sort of focus can we see on Indigenous affairs at that next federal election? The new Minister for Indigenous Australians is from the Northern Territory, is grounded in her culture and has a real sense of the challenges on the ground that are unique to this place and different to anywhere else in the country.
That's right. The last few years, the PM's speech, there's been huge anticipation about the Prime Minister's keynote speech. What announcements will he make? What promises might he put out there? I know last year the big conversation was, will the Prime Minister announce a date for the referendum? He did not announce the date at last year's Garma.
And of course the year before that, in 2022, this was where we got a sense of what we would be discussing in the year ahead going to the referendum. The Prime Minister there adding so much detail and saying, look, this is the starting point of a different conversation nationally. That is what played out last year. But of course the impact of that is one that you cannot escape here. It's what everyone wants to talk about. There is such an active and powerful discussion. We're going to take you back now to listen in to some of this performance. Now, Carly, the ceremony continuing. There is a real sense of occasion here. The Prime Minister, the Minister for Indigenous Australians, the former Minister for Indigenous Australians, Linda Burney, who announced just days ago that she had decided she wouldn't be recontesting the next federal election in her seat of Barton in Sydney in New South Wales. And of course then we saw the Prime Minister standing next to her and really speaking to the impact that Linda Burney has had. She stepped down from the ministry, still in Parliament until the next election, it must be noted, and is sitting here today as the member for Barton, someone who has had a big impact on Labor policy and the way that the government has been handling the rollout of the discussion around the Voice last year, who is also a part of this ceremony. In a sense, you get the sense that this is part of a way, a thank you from this community to the former minister. I
think so. There is so much gratitude here and thanks to Linda Burney. I mean, she's been a public servant for a very long time. I think the Prime Minister is sitting snug there between two very strong Aboriginal women. Yeah. He has the new Minister for Indigenous Australians, Malandiri McCarthy, who's said to me this morning, I've only been in the job 4 days. I mean, we saw those beautiful images of her being sworn in. She was in a gorgeous bright red frock. and some spectacles.
And of course, the first swearing in of the new Governor General Sam Boston AC, who was appointed into that role as Australia's second woman to be Governor General just a couple of months ago. But of course, Melinda McCarthy, part of her background was being the Assistant Minister for Indigenous Health, a senator before that for as well as that in the Northern Territory. She was the member for Arnhem in the Northern Territory.
How do you feel as a Territorian?
It's interesting because right now we are in a situation federally where both the Minister for Indigenous Australians and the shadow spokesperson for Indigenous Australians are both Aboriginal women from the Northern Territory, and who are both senators on either side of politics. And of course, it's referring there to Melinda McCarthy in government, and in opposition, Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price, who's from Alice Springs and had a very prominent role in the campaign last year of campaigning for no, against the voice to Parliament. So I think what's really fascinating for me is that you've got the two people that are driving Indigenous affairs debate nationally on both sides of politics, of
Very
course,
powerful.
are from this country, are from the Northern Territory. So you can't think that there won't be a powerful tone of understanding of politics from a Northern Territory lens in the cabinet room, in the shadow cabinet room, informing those chats.
Both women have been speaking about their ideas for the Northern Territory. I mean, Minister McCarthy reminded me this morning about the $4 billion that Labor has spent on the Northern Territory for housing recently. And Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price, I'm not sure she's attending Garma this weekend, but no matter what side of politics you're on, Dan, Aboriginal representation is important.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it, and we're seeing Territorian women strong.
Yeah, and of course, those two senators, the minister and the shadow minister, are a part of a cohort of about 11 Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander members of Parliament from Labor, CLP, the Liberals, the Greens, the Independents as well. So you've got these array of views and perspectives. The highest number of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people ever in Parliament, and of course, the majority of those are women as well. So coming from so many different parts of this nation, bringing so many different perspectives to all of those conversations that are happening in party rooms.
I think that's only a very good thing, because not all Aboriginal people have the same views.
No.
There is a huge diversity of perspectives. We don't all vote the same. We don't all think the same. So, yeah, a monumental amount of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in politics.
And this is the place where we see those ideas, that contest, that challenge of ideas, the debating and the discussing. And I was talking to people who were really actively campaigning across last year, talking about wanting to come together here on this important platform to speak about the future.
Yeah, some big conversations happening at Garma. As we move from one welcoming dance, you can see the little one there. The next generation is a big topic this weekend. Passing on the knowledge.
I did get a text message just a minute ago about that little 2-year-old there saying, do you know what, Dad, it doesn't matter who else is here, that little child is stealing the show right now.
And that's happened at the last couple of Garmas. We've seen gorgeous little ones come out and just snatch that spotlight, snatch the spotlight from the PM. Don't mind if they do. There was a little one who's almost, primary school age now, who was photographed at Garma when they were just a tiny, tiny tot. So we're seeing these kids grow up and thrive out here.
Yeah, and in fact, even on the front page of the program, it is a tiny, little person who is just there loving it and having the most extraordinary time.
No nerves at all. There's just an incredible strength and resilience in the air.
And something that if you're watching you'll have noticed is that there was just a move from male dancers before to female dancers now, telling really different stories and sharing different aspects and elements of culture with everyone who's here, but of course with everyone who is gathered, who is watching this wherever you are in Australia right now as well.
We've seen the women come out with the little ones from primary school age all the way down to must be about 2 years old.
And Carly, you can see that there are so many different groups of dancers, of performers who are waiting to perform and then watching and listening and hanging off every part of the performance of the next group who are there. And of course, all of this while the political leaders are there, the business leaders from around Australia, Indigenous, Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander leaders from different communities, from different sectors, from different parts of our national community who are here sharing in this moment right now, where we're seeing so much of what is happening, what is the culture of this part of the country. That's a part of the nation that so many people wouldn't get the opportunity to come to. It is very difficult to get here.
This is a once in a lifetime, bucket list event. A lot of mob tell me I must go to Garma once. I must see that melding of the merging of Western culture with this ancient Yolngu culture that is still so strong. And the Yunupingu leaders, that was so important to them. They grew up in two worlds, in two cultures, and it was important to keep this custom and these protocols and language strong. Dan, when I see this, and being a Quandamooka woman coming from, my family are from North Stradbroke Island. I grew up in North Queensland, but, coming from Minjerribah, where my family are, where language was really taken from Kondamukka people and many East Coast mobs. That was taken, and the mission system was very strong, very early. So when I see this, get to experience this, I feel a bit jealous sometimes, you know, like that I haven't grown up with culture like this strong in front of me every day, always connected, but it is just so incredible to see this in, you know, younger people sharing just so generously.
Tell me about, Carly, about that feeling there about really what you're touching on is mourning what is lost to you, to your family.
Yeah, my grandfather was one of the first Indigenous journalists in Queensland. Worked for the Sunday Truth and Wynnum Herald, and we've got all of his newspaper articles, hundreds of them, snipped up in a scrap blanket. Yeah, continuing the legacy now. But look, he wrote about race relations in the 60s, but also wrote out words in his language. And was writing to MPs and the newspaper would, you know, New Knuckle Beach and bringing back those traditional place names in the 60s. So, you know, I grew up with some words, and there's very strong culture still on Minjerribah. I went out with an uncle recently, you know, dugong hunting and showing that custom.
Which, of course, is a really important traditional culture.
It is. But me growing up off the island where there was a mission, the Maiora mission, language was banned. Kawabbaris were banned.
Yeah.
These are the stories that my mum tells me, and my aunties and uncles and the elders on the island tell me. It was tried. Yeah, there was an attempt to snatch that away. It's still going. But when I see people singing in language here, I get a little bit jealous.
Yeah, I can see and I can hear that emotion and that heart, and it's fascinating because I wonder if part of what drove me into journalism as a 13-year-old in Tennant Creek was about seeking to understand through stories about who we are and about what is our impact and how do we understand better about who we are and the role that we play. And I remember speaking at the time to my now late great auntie Rita, who at the time she was growing up in Victoria where our family connections are. She was made to walk on the other side of the street by kids. They said that she was born at midnight because of how black her skin was. And she told me that when she was going to school, she had to eat lunch in the toilet cubicle by herself because she didn't know one wanted to sit with her. And she told me about having to become a fighter to defend herself and to really hold that ground. When she was going into the workforce in Melbourne years later, if she had said she was Aboriginal when she was asked about her dark skin, she said she wouldn't have got the job, and that she said she was Indian because that was seen at the time as more acceptable. And I remember talking to her and I said, Auntie, how do you not feel angry and so fury about the way that you've been treated? And she said to me, well, I did for a long time until I realised that nothing can come from that, and it's not a place that you can hold. And she said, and also if I was angry, I probably wouldn't be able to impart the stories, the lived experience onto my great nephew, who is going to be a storyteller one day. And so I think about that a lot, and that kind of profound wisdom of elders, and I think it's why understanding eldership and sharing the stories and creating platforms for elders is so crucially important. It's what drove us to do the 1+1 Elders series. We might just take you back here where there is a moment where the dancers are stepping out of the Bungal ground.
You know. Thank you, Mari Bolo. Please, do give him another hand, please, ladies and gentlemen. Yo, Mari. Don't walk away. Don't go away yet. We have combatants to come on next. So hang around.
And Carly, as we there hear Jawa Yunupingu farewelling those first groups of dancers saying, hold on, don't go anywhere, because there is more to come.
The Gumatj clan is about to dance and in front of the Prime Minister and the Indigenous Minister for Indigenous Australians, Malandiri McCarthy, is also sitting next to the Prime Minister, and along with the former Minister for Indigenous Australians, Linda Burney, sort of flanking the PM as he receives this incredible display of 60,000 years of Aboriginal culture. And the baby's there, just stealing the show, as per usual.
And of course, along with the former Senator and Special Envoy for Reconciliation, Patrick Dodson, it was the three of them, Linda Burney, Malandiri McCarthy and Patrick Johnson, who were the key advisors to the Prime Minister on Indigenous affairs, of course in the ministerial capacity as Assistant Minister, and then as the Special Envoy driving that conversation about reconciliation throughout last year. And of course that was part of that representation within the government there, who two of those three are here right now as a part of this ceremony, this 2024 Garma Festival, which of course, as we've mentioned, has that theme of fire, strength and renewal. And as it was put to me a little earlier, you cannot disconnect one from the other, that the fire is about what sweeps through and it creates and clears the land and creates space for fresh growth. There is the strength that comes from understanding that connection and deeply being connected to country, and of course renewal. Carly, so many people have spoken, including to you, about the need for younger Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders to step into the spotlight, to be part of these big conversations going forward. Creating
space, that's right. Creating space for the next generation to take the conversations forward. I know that, there's a lot of anticipation usually around the Prime Minister's keynote speech at Garma. And last year, everybody thought that he was going to announce the date of the referendum. He did not announce that last year. But this year, what have you got any wind, Dan, of what the PM's going to say in his keynote speech? A lot of Gumatj people here on the ground at Garma I've spoken to have said, well, we don't know what he's going to say. We don't know if there's going to be any big announcements, but we just want to say thank you for delivering on your promise to take the country to a referendum. This year's about that acknowledgement, but also about saying, okay, how do we move forward?
And you get the sense that there will be expectations that the Prime Minister might touch on those other elements of the Uluru Statement, the Treaty and Truth, and of course Makarara, a Yolngu term meaning coming together after conflict to find common ground, to find resolution, to find a way forward. So there are so many layers to what the expectations are of what the Prime Minister could speak about, and of course the Prime Minister might not make any announcements. This might be, as we've heard, about reflecting upon the past, and as the Prime Minister himself said about in that speech just a short while ago about finding the ground to walk together and creating that space. So there will be, of course, a huge amount of anticipation, and then we know that the Prime Minister will be doing at least one interview with David Spears for Insiders on Sunday that you will be appearing
That's right.
on. And is that your first?
I have been on Insiders before, but in a different way. So a week after the referendum last year in October, when a lot of remote communities voted very highly at the voting booths in favour of an Indigenous voice to Parliament. I travelled to Yarrabah in far north Queensland, about 45-minute drive away from Cairns. The leaders in Yarrabah invited me to come and listen to leaders there because I believe it was about 97% of the community in Yarrabah voted yes to an Indigenous voice to Parliament in October last year. So we went there for Insiders for the first Sunday, the second Sunday rather, after the referendum. And there was that week of silence from proponents of the voice. Many leaders took 7 days before they wanted to speak to media or publicly at all. But leaders in Yarrabah hosted myself there that week after the referendum, and they were very hurt. Sue Andrews is the CEO of the local Aboriginal Medical Service there, and she spoke a lot about housing. They've got thousands and 3,500, 4,000 people living in Yarrabah, and around 400 houses or even less. They have a local leadership forum in Yarrabah that could be scaled up. It acts like a local community voice. That works really well for them. But what the mayor in Yarrabah was saying at the time, and leaders there were saying they were very, very keen on an Indigenous voice to Parliament, and were devastated when the majority of the country voted no, because when you looked at those remote polling booths, whether it was Doomadgee, Normington, Yarrabah, this is all in sort of the northern end of Queensland, those Aboriginal communities had a very high yes vote. And then as you got towards the cities, it leaned a lot more towards no. But that's when I did Insiders last. Bit of a beaming in, which was incredible to see that community response at the time.
So, ladies and gentlemen, second on. Those are more dancing. So, come on, please.
Together after a conflict. A lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have told me in the last 10 months the referendum felt like a conflict. I was speaking to Professor Pat Dudgeon, who's a expert in Indigenous social and emotional wellbeing and Indigenous suicide. I was doing a story on the Closing the Gap target that is going backwards. Suicide, and she told me, the referendum has hurt so many, and we, still trying to collect data, but anecdotally, she's heard it's been a big driver of mob feeling depressed about, not getting that voice, but not all Aboriginal people, of course, wanted a voice. There was a huge diversity of views.
There's a tree that is surrounding us. So, thank you. Give him a hand. Yo, come on. Look, Cindy.
So, Carly, we've been watching, hearing, experiencing this culture as it's being passed on and shared from Yolngu people here in Arnhem Land, welcoming Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, his Indigenous Australians Minister Malingeri McCarthy, the Northern Territory Senator, and also we've been hearing and seeing so much of an exploration of culture that is tens of thousands of years old here on this Bungal ground that is, as the late Yunupingu described it, Yolngu people's universities. Stories are shared where culture is passed on from one generation to the next.
The Bungal ground, this ancient Aboriginal place where ceremonies have taken place long before the official Garma festival started, more than 24 years ago now. And the babies there always taking centre stage. That is our future, Australia. Look at that.
And this is where we will leave this special coverage of the opening ceremony of the Garma Festival 2024. Fire, Strength, Renewal will be what grounds the conversations here on this special country over the coming days. And as we are bringing to a close this formal opening, I'm looking around. There are people whose eyes are filled with tears, Carly, as they are watching on and sharing that. And of course,
it's just starting to rain.
The skies are opening up once again, much heavier.
How's the timing? Happy Garma 2024.
Back to you, Joe.
Okay, so it's the ABC's Dan Bourchier and Carly Williams there at the opening ceremony of the Garma Festival at Gulkala on Gumatj country. It's the country's biggest gathering of First Nations politics and culture and the first Garma Festival to be held since the failed Voice to Parliament referendum. And we'll have more coverage on the ABC News channel of the festival as it continues throughout the weekend in North East Arnhem Land.